Okay, so today we're going to talk about bid education and how this whole bidding thing works. So, the example that I have in front of you guys right now is an example of one product category. So, if you notice up on top here, I have it listed as beds, but this is going to be the same for each product category. So, I could make this walkers, I can make it oxygen, I can make it whatever we wanted to make it. So, walkers is the overall product category, and then within that category, we have a list of HCPC codes that we're going to be bidding on. And each of those HCPC codes are going to be calculated in the overall bid. Now, let me start off by taking care of some of the misconceptions there are regarding competitive bidding. One of the misconceptions that a lot of people have is that, well, if I look at my HCPC code A, I'm going to bid $13. And I'm hoping that my $13 is going to be better than my competitors' $14. And if they bid $14 and I bid $13, well, then I'll win HCPC code A. Well, that's not the case. That's not true. That's not how it works. The second misconception that people have is that, well, okay, I'm going to bid $13 for HCPC code A, $34 for HCPC code B, $77 for C. Let's say we go $2,000 for D, and heck, we'll go $80 and so on. And now we add up all of these numbers, and we're going to come up with a total number of $2,237.75. And this number is what's going to be used to be compared against the competitors to see if my number is lower than theirs. And if this number is lower than the competitors, then I'll win. That's not true either. The way that they are going to be evaluating the bid is they're going to take your bid amount and they're going to multiply your bid for each HCPC code against a weight. And this is a weighted importance for this HCPC code. And that amount is going to be placed over here to what we call the weighted bid. So it is what percentage of your total bid is going to be calculated in the weighted bid. And we're going to do that for each category, for each HCPC code. So in this case, $13 is going to be multiplied by a weight of 0.5611. So $7.30 is going to be included in the weighted bid. For the HCPC code B, we have our bid is $34, and the weighted amount that was multiplied by is 0.2244. So $7.63 is going to be calculated in the weighted bid. Here's something to notice. Look, our bid here for A was 13, and our bid for B was 34, which is more than double what A is. But the weighted amounts are almost exactly the same. And that's how this whole weights make a big difference on how this bid is calculated. Now, once they come up with a weighted bid for each HCPC code, they're going to add all of those numbers up and come up with one composite bid. This is the one number that is going to be used to compare our bid with everybody else's bid. And as long as our composite bid is lower than what's called the pivotal bid, we will be considered a winner in this competitive bidding. If we are higher than the pivotal bid, then we will not be a winner. And we're going to go through how this whole thing happens. Before we get into that, the first thing I want to do is talk about how these weights are considered, or how they are calculated. To determine the weights for each of the HCPC codes, what they're doing is they're looking at the 2010 utilization for Medicare, and they're determining how many units were paid for in 2010 for each HCPC code. So in this case, 2,500 units were paid by Medicare for HCPC code A. 1,000 units were paid for by Medicare in HCPC code B, and all the way down the line. Now, and this is specific to a competitive bidding area. So after we figure out the units for each of these HCPC codes, they are added up, and we have a total down here, in this case 4,455 units. That is the total utilization for this product category. Then to determine the weights, we're simply taking the number of units that were paid for by Medicare for HCPC code A and dividing it by the total. And that gives us our total weight. And then we do that for each of the different HCPC codes, and that's how each of the weights are calculated for each of the codes. And these weights are what's multiplied by the bid to create the weighted bid amount. So, with all of that being said, the main number here is this number right here, this composite bid. Because I want to show you a couple of things. This number here, $2,237, that's the aggregate total of all 6 bids here. But let's say we wanted to lower that amount. And HCPC code D has a very low weight, which means that the importance of this number is actually very low. But HCPC code A has a very high weight, which means the importance of this number is very high. Well, if we didn't know that, and let's flip-flop it. Let's say we said, geez, I'm going to raise my bid for HCPC code A by $5. So let's make that $18. And now I'm going to lower my HCPC code for D by $1,000. So let's make that $1,000. Well, what's happened is that our composite bid has actually gone up. Even though our aggregate total bid has gone down by $995, our composite bid went up. And that's because the amount of importance that is on this HCPC code A is so much so that it affected the weighted bid. So when we're doing our strategy session to determine what do we want to bid here, we want to take in consideration our weights for each of the categories. Now, a couple of stipulations that we have to think about. If we say, well, since I know this is the heaviest weighted item, let's just make this $1. Well, the problem with that is this is not what they call bona fide, because it's not reasonable. If my cost for HCPC code A is $5, then it wouldn't make sense that I'd be willing to sell it for $1. I would lose $4 every time. So if we were to go into this strategy and put $1 in for HCPC code A, our bid would be considered non-bona fide, and our bids would be rejected. So we definitely don't want to be a non-bona fide bid. Similarly, we wouldn't want to just put, let's say, $5.50, because even though our direct cost for HCPC code A is $5, we still have to take in consideration what is our operating expense that's associated with that HCPC code. So then we may ask ourselves, well, how do we figure out what is our operating expense for that HCPC code? Well, if we look at our financial statements, and in particular our income statement, on there we can pull out of there what's called the operating expense as a percent of sales. Whatever this number is can be evenly spread over every product. And that's how we can determine what is our operating expense for each HCPC code. So let's try and figure out what our operating expense is for these HCPC codes. So let's say that our operating expense is 50%. So we're going to take this 50% and we're going to multiply it by our sales amount. In this case, the sale amount per unit for HCPC code A would be $20, or whatever the fee schedule is. So this would equal, well, $10. So $10 would be the operating expense that's associated with HCPC code A. Now, to figure out what our total cost is for HCPC code A, we would take our operating expense of $10 and add it to our direct cost for HCPC code A, and we would get a total cost of $15. Well, now if we look at our bid at $5.50, again, this is not necessarily bona fide because we would not be willing to service HCPC code A at such a large loss. So again, this would be a non-bona fide bid, and we would have our bids rejected. So we want to make sure that we're bidding in considering not only our direct cost, but also our operating expense to determine what our total cost is. Okay? So, let's do this here. So now that we know that, we can go into a little bit of strategy. Over here, you'll see capacity. I'm going to get into capacity in a little bit, but for right now, the first thing they're going to want to know is what was the capacity that you provided to Medicare in the last calendar year. So you're going to plug that into the calculator to determine what is our current revenue that's generated by Medicare. But when we determine on how much we can furnish, we'll talk about that in a second. So now that we've created our bids, and let's say all of these bids are considered bona fide by us, and we've calculated our weighted bid amount, now we have our composite bid. So let's see how Medicare is going to figure out who the winner is. So we're going to go down over here. And down over here, they're going to take us, we're company 1, and they're going to take our composite bid and list it down here. And then they're going to have a whole bunch of other people participating in the competitive bid, and they're going to do the same thing, put their composite bid up against ours. Then what they're going to do is they're going to look to see who has the absolute lowest composite bid. In this case, company 10 has the lowest composite bid. When they figure that out, they're going to say, congratulations, you are the winner. And company 10 has now won competitive bidding. So, but now what CMS has to do is figure out, well, how many more winners can we have? This is where capacity comes into play. What they're going to do is they're going to look at the 2010 total utilization numbers, in this case 4,455, and they're going to add 20% to that and come up with the total capacity needed to fill, in this case 5,346 units. So when they get that first winner, in this case company 10, they're going to look at how many units did company 10 say that they could furnish for this product category. In this case, they said 1,147 units. So what CMS does is going to reduce the capacity by the amount of units that company 10 say they could furnish, and the remaining amount is listed here, 4,199. This says that we need to find more winners to fulfill our capacity. Okay, so now they know they need to fill this 4,199. They're going to look for the next winner. So the next lowest bid in this case is company 7. So they're going to say, congratulations, company 7, you're now a winner. And they're going to take 808 off of the remaining capacity. And they're just going to keep on doing this until they get to a point where this number becomes negative. So we're just going to keep looking for the lowest amounts. 5. The next one's company 5. We're getting close to the end. Here, company 1, we won. Haha. All right, that's it. And now that this is negative, this becomes what they call the pivotal bid. And any bid that is above this is not a winner. And any bid that is below this is a winner. Okay? So now we're going to talk about what do we do after we selected all the winners.